Welcome back in, everybody. This is the Box Score Network. I am Ben Parker, joined by Robertson, Viar. As always, it is a privilege to have you on board. We are going to be talking about the Washington Commanders and nothing but the Washington Commanders tonight. So we've got a long offseason ahead of us. We're going to talk about everything through every part of the offseason. Some of it we will react to as it happens. Other parts of it we will look ahead and plan and give our advice and counsel on it. But we're going to cover everything Commanders all during the off season. Robertson, we're a week or two removed now from the ending that we kind of sort of had thought had to happen at some point. So, how do you feel now? Everything's moved ahead.
Hey man, it is what it is, you know. It wasn't it was surprising the way that it ended. Um, but I'll say that, if you listen to our last episode on YouTube here, me and you were kind of both on the same page where it was very possible in the game that we would just get outclassed because of the talent discrepancy of the two rosters. And that's what ended up happening. It was I actually thought they hung around a lot um, a lot longer than I thought that they would, given the flow of the game. But overall, I was just happy for the season that we had. Grateful for that. It's a season that me and many other Washington football fans are not going to forget for, a long time. So it was a memorable season. It will not be forgotten, and you're optimistic and excited for the future.
That's the beauty of it, because even if let's say the next 3 years are a bomb, which they're not going to be, but if they were, you still at least have this one magical fairy tale of the season to look back on.
Yep.
I'm going to bring up a different emotion here now. Okay, we're going to keep our fan hats on here for just a second. No serious front office talk for a second. Just our fan hats. There just happens to be one of the best players in football named Myles Garrett over the past day or two, who just basically officially said, "Get me out of Cleveland." Now, that may or may not happen. Cleveland doesn't have to do that, as you know, as a Washington fan with Trent Williams a few years ago. Let him fester and let the whole situation get worse. But let's assume for a moment that Myles Garrett actually does get onto the trading block and is available to be traded, and the Commanders got a shot at him, which of course they would have a shot at him. Just emotionally as a fan, how would you feel about the possibilities, at least, of adding 29-year-old Myles Garrett, who is arguably the best defensive player in football, but certainly among them? Emotionally, how would that make you feel, man?
So in this hypothetical here, setting price aside and what you would have to give up to get them, I mean, it would
No
be
front office hats, man.
yeah,
Just boom,
yeah,
fans, fans
it
only.
would it would be great. It really would be. I mean, this would be the best player on defense that we've had. I mean, Daryl Green since when he retired in
Wow,
2002, 2003. I mean, you
wow.
could argue Sean Taylor, but at that time, I mean, he was just reaching his prime. He wasn't in his prime, having had 5, 6 seasons to back that up with, whereas Myles Garrett has. He's I think he's got over 100 sacks already, and he's not even 30 years old, as you mentioned. So it would be pretty outstanding to have him on the team.
So, let me tell the audience, those of you watching, listening, I'm going to put up all kinds of numbers tonight, and as always, we try to double check these, but there could be something here that's a typo. So don't put too much emphasis on one number if you see it wrong, or feel free to shoot me in the comments. Or in some cases, the financial numbers are projections, or in some cases, the financial numbers change from one week, 1 month to the next. So again, it's just to give you a feel for stuff that you're looking at. But if you see something looks a little bit off, I take it with a grain of salt, move on. We'll try to keep the conversations real, no matter what the numbers might be. So, Robertson, we're going to take our fan hats off here. Okay, we're going to put our front office hats back on. Talk some real football here. I've got a few numbers up here. You alluded to them. The sacks, man, goodness gracious, by year. I mean, 7 in his rookie season. And every year after that, it's double digits, man. And I mean, now he's up at 16s and 14s every year. So this guy's a monster, and the sacks only tell the half of it, right? Doesn't even begin to talk about the pressures and the double teams and we've got to run away from Garrett instead of
Hmm.
rolling out to his side. All of that. He's phenomenal. On his career, man, 8 seasons, 6 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pros, and 1 Defensive Player of the Year. Could have had 2 possibly, but
Yeah.
didn't get it. There's really no way to say it. Everybody loves Myles Garrett, and everybody would want him on their team, but not everybody can or should pay the price. And in fact, he's already indicated that Super Bowl contestants only, please, which cuts out a good half of the team, a half of the league, really. So we're sitting here as the Commanders. We're going to talk our way a little bit through not the fact that we love him or want him, but what it would actually take to get him, and are we willing to pay that price? Okay, so walk me down some of that. I've got the draft picks up. I've got the current contract up right here, which doesn't even include like a roster bonus or anything like that. That's just current cap bits, right? And you mentioned maybe getting $30 million a year. It might be 33, but whatever it is, it'll be a lot, whenever that hits. So walk me through what you feel like from a front office standpoint you would really be willing to consider or not consider bringing Garrett into the building.
Well, it's hard because we talked a little bit about this pre-production where if the Commanders were on schedule as they were projected to before the season, just say they went 8-9, Jane Daniels still showed some massive promise and still probably gets a Rookie of the Year award. This would be a normal offseason. You would look at the roster as devoid of top end talent. You would look at it as and lacking of depth, pretty much at every single position that we that we have, unfortunately. So a move like this would you'd probably say, well, it doesn't really make that much sense. But knowing what we know now, having made the NFC Championship game, winning 12 regular season games, and Jaden Daniels looking like one of those quarterbacks that it doesn't matter what's around him, he's going to make it work. This move makes sense if you're trying to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 seasons while he's still on that rookie deal, while Jaden Daniels is still on that rookie deal. Um, In terms of compensation, that's hard because if I'm not mistaken, he still has 2 years left on his deal, and but there's no guaranteed
Yeah.
money, correct?
I
So
know the 2 years, yes. I would have to go back and look up the guaranteed money part. But either way, yeah, he's got 2 years existing currently.
yeah, so more likely than not, you're gonna have to rip up that deal and get a new one signed to probably at least in low 30s in that range. So in terms of compensation, not only are you committing a large cap number to him, but you're also having to go give up substantial draft compensation. It's going to be at least a first, a third, or a second, and a player, a high-end player. And if there's not a player included, probably a first, 2 seconds, and a third, or two firsts and like a fifth, or something of that nature. It's going to be a steep price. What I would be comfortable with would be a first, a third, like a next year conditional third, and like a guy like Deron Payne or John Allen. Now, I know that they are kind of staples. They've been one of the more longer tenured players. Payne and Allen have been. But really, over the past couple of seasons, the production has not been there. They have not really lived up to the contracts that they have signed, and you can trade Payne and save like 9 million bucks if you do it after the uh, June 1st date. Um, Allen, he has no guaranteed money left, so you're gonna have to rework a deal for him anyway. Um, there's something that just isn't working there with those two. So including one of them, or maybe even both of them in that deal, could potentially work. It'd probably just be one of them, but you're gonna have to give Cleveland something back because look at it from their situation. They're gonna have to draft a quarterback probably with that first pick, and they're gonna have to lean on that running game, lean on that defense. Getting rid of a Myles Garrett is not ideal situation to stay competitive. So um, it's going to take more than what I probably mentioned, but I just can't imagine giving up much more than that if for a building team still, because I still think we're a building team. We can contend, but we have to be smart and build at the same time. So
If it were me, and again, this will change during the offseason. We'll find out more of what teams are willing to be giving up. I would be, I would jump all over that deal. If we could give up one of the two defensive tackles, if we could give up a first and a third, and maybe I don't know, a six, I would jump all over that. I would be in on it. Now, if the price is higher, I'm still interested because I believe Myles Garrett is so good, and because I think, I'll say that again. I think he should be good for the next 2 to 3 seasons, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about 3 and 4 seasons out? Where does the cliff, the age and injury start to kick in? It's going to kick in somewhere, right? So am I still happy at that point with having to pay 30 to 33 a year? I'm not thrilled with it. But if for the next 2 or 3 seasons I get something close to Pete Garrett, then I'm okay with 30 to 33 a year. It might even stay the same in 2025. The cap number might stay the same, but moving up through 26, 27, 28. I'm interested still, even if I have to give up 2 first-round draft picks. That's the price I'm hearing in several places, but maybe there might not be a team that's willing to do it. But in any case, I'm interested. He's so good. He would
Yeah.
change so much on the front end that I wouldn't have to be as worried about fixing the back end of my defense if I didn't want to. I could move over to fixing wide receiver or tackle or guard or running back or depth at linebacker, whatever, you name it. It would give me freedom to not necessarily have to do that. So we'll stay tuned on the prices. If it comes up again in the next couple of weeks, I don't think this is going to get resolved quickly. So we will talk about this more over the next few weeks as it starts to become apparent. I do feel like, though, and I'll let you have the last word on this. If Garrett becomes available, I'm convinced that the Commanders are one of the top 4 or 5 teams that would be in the mix. Whether or not they would actually do it is a different story, but they would be in the mix. I don't think that's a fallacy at all.
I agree with that. I think we should be in the running for it, just because it's such, in my opinion, it's a desperate need. Um, However, you can look at it from those perspectives where you're going to be picking late first round this year, probably late first round next year, towards the end of the hopefully the very last pick of the first round next year. But so what are either of those players that you pick? So if it's the two ones that you mentioned, are either of those players going to be of Myles Garrett's caliber?
No, never,
Probably not. Not never say never, but probably not. So
never,
giving up giving
never
up
will they
two
be as good as Myles Garrett.
giving up two ones in that perspective isn't really that terrible of a price, but at the same time, as we're gonna get into here in a few minutes, there's so many holes on this roster, and one player is not gonna fix it all.
All right. And for me, it's not a no brainer. I know I'm hearing some people say every team in the league should be calling and willing to jump on it. Well, not necessarily. It is worth thinking about it. I'm very interested in doing it. I would love it if they did, but still,
Absolutely.
there are age factors here and trade factors here that make it worth stopping and thinking about before pulling a trigger. All right. Like I said, we will talk more about that in the coming weeks as that situation develops. Tonight, the main focus, and maybe why some of you are here, we're going to talk about the Commanders' overall health, if you will, financial situation, and just get a feel for how they're sitting. I've got a big board here. I've got things all over the place. So I warned y'all that this was coming here. I don't even know where to put this guy. So we've got things all over the place here. Robertson, I'm going to let you pick a place where you want to start here. Eventually, we'll cover all of this. But what's a place here on the board you want to start at? Let's dig into just how healthy their financial situation is and just their overview.
Let's just start with that line graph you got top right there. I mean, my goodness, that if that doesn't tell you the emotions of a of a Washington football fan, I don't know what
Yes.
does. I don't know what does.
Yeah, listen, it starts here in '05. I basically pulled the last 20 years here. And
Yep.
there's a couple of nice seasons, right? There's a couple of tens and a couple of nines. The rest, goodness gracious, it's eights
Yuck.
and fives and threes and fours and a lot of sevens right in here. And then boom, 12. So, needless to say, the attitude is up, way up, just like a stock market. The energy is way up here. So you're right. That totally reflects what they're feeling. I'm going to go back here to 2024. There's a couple of points to be made here. right here are the highest paid players for 2024. And keep in mind, if y'all see a number that doesn't look right, then it could just be a typo, or hey, the number may have changed since we made the video. So McLaren came in first at $24.1 million. Not a bad cap hit for large cap hits, to be honest. Deron Payne here, 21.6 in the season we just finished. Jonathan Allen, of course, two defensive tackles, getting paid a lot of money, 20.9. After that, pretty big drop off. Andrew Wiley coming in at $9.4 million, and then Jaden Daniels, of all people, on a rookie contract, is your fifth highest paid player in 2024 at $6.9 million. So not only are you not seeing a lot of big hits here for 2024, but they just weren't taking up all that much of the cap. I mean, like you're looking right here, basically taking up about 25% of the cap when you add those five players together, maybe slightly over under that. So again, the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, their top three players are basically going to take up 50% of the cap. All right, so that just gives you an idea just off the bat how much more flexibility Washington has this year. I'm going to list the 25 salary cap guys, and the guy that you brought up, Marshawn Lattimore, as well during our pre-production. Terry McLaurin, still going to make $25.5 million, probably an extension during the offseason. We'll talk about that in future weeks. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen still making $26.2 and $22.5 million this year. It goes up a little bit from what they were making last year. Marshawn Lattimore now on the books, $18 million. They've got flexibility with him, whatever they want to try to work out with him. And then linebacker, not quarterback, Frankie Louvu. So anybody jump out right there off the bat out of the players we just mentioned?
I mean, all three of those defensive guys, you got Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Frankie Louvu. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore. So Jonathan Allen and Marshawn Lattimore, they don't have any guaranteed money left on their deals. Um, Allen is entering the last year of his deal. Marshawn Lattimore has 2 years left on his deal. Um, you could, in theory, create $34 million by either trading or cutting them or, getting them off your books. You can create a lot of cap space moving those two players. Now, John Allen, is he a trade piece? I think he is. I don't think you're not going to just outright cut him. Despite, his lack of production past couple of years, he's not a guy you cut. You can get something back for him, even if it's just a couple of mid-rounders or something like that. You're going to get something back for him. A guy like Marshawn Lattimore, a lot of people, a lot of fans at least, were killing him when he was on the field this year because he went up against guys like Mike Evans and AJ Brown, two of the best receivers in football,
Right.
and he was getting, I wouldn't say torched, but they were having their way with him,
Pushed
and
around a little bit.
yeah, very much so, and drawing penalties and so forth. So he didn't have the best of matchups against those two guys. Outside of that, he played perfectly fine as advertised, but no one really wants to focus on those stats there. My contention is, how do they feel? How does Adam Peters and Dan Quinn feel about him? Uh, when they got in the building, were they hoping that he would be ready sooner than he was? Because it took like 5, 6 weeks for him to finally suit up after, they had traded for him. So like, what was he doing? Like, was he doing everything that he needed to be doing? So
Yeah.
there could
Yeah.
be a discussion there, an in-house discussion, like, hey, is this what we really want? And if they don't want it, they can save 18 million bucks by moving on from them, either by trading, cutting them, and cut your losses. Just be responsible. Be like, hey, we messed up. Let's just move on. No one's the wiser. So, I feel like those two specifically, Allen and Lattimore, they could be potential pieces that could be on the move.
That's a great point. And I will say, let's settle on Lattimore for just a second here. I'm glad Washington brought him in. I thought it made a difference in the way
Yes.
they could play defense, as you predicted that it would. And yet, there was also the undeniable fact that against two of the bigger, stronger, better receivers in the game, he did struggle. That you could see that as well. So both sides of it. I'm okay if they re-sign him. I just hope it's not for I don't want it to be for a 4-year deal, right? At his
No.
age, give me a 1 or 2 year contract, and I don't necessarily mind a large cap number along with that. Whatever, I don't know, 18, 20. I'm okay with that cap number as long as I'm not locked in for 2, 3, 4 seasons here. I want to have my flex here. See if he'll be okay with that. Allen, no, I'm not against either the defensive tackle, but I would love to go ahead and drop at least one of those two defensive tackles to get that number off the books. I'm not going to rush to do it, but man, without Myles Garrett thing floating around out there, and with the Marshawn Lattimore thing, I know I've got cap space. We'll get to that here in a second. I know I do, but still, and with Jerzon Newton sitting back there on the bench, I would love to go ahead and get one of those two defensive tackle numbers, and you're obviously rightly telling me that it's Jonathan Allen that would be the guy, especially if I can trade him away and get something. I don't think it's going to be a lock, right? But a haul. But if I can get something and drop that cap number, I'll be very interested in doing that, and maybe sort of hopefully keeping Marshawn Lattimore at not a too big of a deal. Anything else on those two players?
No, just a personal preference of mine. I would rather trade Deron Payne than John Allen. It would have to be one of those
You think
like
you can get
either.
more for Deron Payne?
It depends on your cap number, right? So do you
Four
the
million off. It's not. It's
yeah,
negligible. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it depends on the cap number, like and what you can the team that's receiving them, right? So you're gonna have to rework a deal for Allen. How much is that going to cost you versus just taking on Payne's contract? Um,
I think Allen would cost less, right? If you reworked the deal than
I,
$22.5 million.
I think he would, but again, it's what the market deems him, and would he re-sign with that team? So that would be something to take into consideration as well. So that may or may not drive up or down the price. Um, I just prefer John Allen. I think I don't want to say a better locker room guy, but he's more of a vocal leader. Not that the locker room necessarily is sore for that, but it's good to keep
Right.
guys like that around. And he worked his tail off. I mean, he tore his pec early on in the season, and he came back like by week I think it was 15 or 16. I mean, that doesn't happen. You tear your pec, you're out for this season. Um, so he worked his butt off to get back in the lineup for this regime, for this coaching staff, for this team. And I just feel like at this point, now that we're good, we're just going to trade him away. That kind of feels, it's my emotions hanging on to it really a little bit there, but I just prefer his play style to Deron Payne's.
I'm okay with that. You could talk me into either defensive tackle. To me, I like them both. I don't love either one. I honestly feel like if I have to rework a deal with either one over the next off season or two, I get them for lower prices, not higher, because they have not lived up to the cap numbers they're getting, and the market is
Right.
not going to give them more; it's going to give them less. So I'm fine with getting rid of either guy. If you're telling me Allen's the better locker room guy, totally cool with that. We'd let Payne go, but again, I want to repeat this because we have cap space. Let me go ahead and bring it up right now. I know everybody wants to know that anyway. And again, this number here, $82.3 million. That's a current moving projection. It changes all the time, so don't put too much stock in if it's $81 million or 89 or whatever. You say, hey, I saw something different on the website. Irrelevant. The point is, you got plenty of cap space, and since you've got tons of cap space, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. I
Yep.
don't feel obligated to move off of either defensive tackle, but if it were me, I don't really like having that much money tied up in the middle. If I can trade one of them and get something, I'm okay doing that. I would be very apt to do that. One thing I want to bring up here, and then I'll let you move on to the next part of the board, whatever it is you want to hit here.
Hmm.
This little number right here, I am huge on this. Makes me
Good
want to
cap.
throw up when I watch people do some of this nonsense. All right.
Yeah.
$47.2 million in dead cap. And most of you in our audience, you know this, but maybe some of you don't, and that's fine. Dead cap is space for guys who are no longer on the team. They are
Yep.
departed by trade or release, but
Hmm.
you're still having to count them on your freaking books. And $47.2 million, I don't mind that since it's year one. It was year one of the
Yeah.
Commanders' new regime. I'm okay with that. But we see teams all the time do this kind of foolish nonsense where the dead caps are huge and take up. Look at this. That is 18% of last year's cap number. All right. Now, again, it's the Commanders' first year as a new regime. I don't mind it here. But to see the other teams do that is completely ridiculous. And here's the best part, it's all off the books. You're down to $8.1 million in dead cap, which means you're only accounting $8 million. A little sliver right here. Where is it? It's this little green, little 4% sliver, which is, I can live with that, right? I'd
Yeah.
still rather be less, but I can live with that. For guys who are no longer on the team, all right. So that's a huge difference. That's cap space. That's all coming back to you, and that's included here in this 80 some, $80 million in change here. Um, Part of that is getting rid of guys you didn't want anymore, but part of that is bad deals. Dead cap space is usually a number one indicator of bad deals that you're trying to get out of. Okay. So it's not just that, oh, we were trying to get rid of some players. These are overflow from bad deals. But I love it that the Commanders have this space now to work with. All right. We're actually going to
Yeah.
put cap space into players that are here on the team this year. So big difference here for the Commanders. And I think they'll do a much better job of managing that over the next few years. Big board, Robertson. Where you want to go here on the board?
I'm actually kind of having trouble seeing a little bit just because of the thing here. So, let's just address, you want to address draft picks, what we got, dry
Let's talk about
powder?
draft picks, man. I Draft picks are fun, man. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, you're not picking in the top 10, I noticed.
Man, I can honestly say other than trading back or trading back into the first round, I've never seen a pick in the past 20, 22, 23.
Who
So
knew it could
this
be
is
done, man?
new territory for me.
All right, so here's what you got. And again, Commanders fans, we know that you know this, but we want to talk about it. So you got pick number 29 in the first round, which is on. That's insane. That's awesome. You got pick 61 in the second, 79 in the third. So you got three of the top 100 picks, as people like to talk about, but only one in the top 40. And then after that, you got your fifth, two, six, and a seventh round pick. You have plenty of things you can do, capital to work with, if you want to call it that. We will do a couple of mock drafts here on the Commanders in the coming weeks. But Robertson, anything real quick here on the draft picks? I mentioned the numbers here.
Nothing really to note. I just feel like this is going to be, if nothing is done about Myles Garrett or say like a Max Crosby or one of these big profile or a Cooper Kupp who just said that he's going to get traded from the Rams. If none of that stuff kind of comes to fruition, then I can see some movement maybe with that second, maybe that third round pick in terms of trading down, getting more assets, mainly because of all the holes that we're getting ready to talk about. So. I don't think that's going to be a final set number that, hey, these are the picks we have and those are the picks we're making. I sincerely doubt that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So let's talk about restructure money. This is another thing that I get after teams over, man. I mean, you talk
Yeah.
about childish sometimes. Okay. At the moment, right now, the Commanders have no restructured money that I could find. I won't promise it's zero, but it's next to nothing. And that can often be an indicator of an untalented roster, which is
Yeah.
somewhat the case here for the Commanders. But too often, too many NFL teams just get way carried out of hand with restructure money. For those of you in the audience who don't know, and a lot of you do, restructure money means you're paying a guy who is still on your roster, but you're basically paying him for something he did a season ago or 2 seasons ago. Because 2 seasons ago, you decided to restructure his contract. And while you created cap space in 2022 or 23, that cap space didn't just disappear. It went over here to 24 and 25. That's exactly what that means every time in every situation. So I'm listen, if you're the Buccaneers and you got Tom Brady for 2 seasons and you want to restructure everybody to catch that window, I'm all in. I'm all in favor of it. But aside from that, let's keep our restructure money low for when we really need it because you're going to have to pay this back at some point. So for the Commanders right now, restructure money is at zero. And this is where it really gets into the health of the team. So we got just about all of our draft picks to work with, right? That's good. That's healthy. We didn't trade them away like the Dolphins and the Rams have done over the past season. We got them to work with. We've got a lot of cap space to work with, so that's good. That's excellent. Love to see that. The restructure money is zero at the moment, or keeping it low. That's good. That's a good sign of health. The dead cap has gone. It's down to $8.1 million. Again, that's a good indicator. Healthy roster going on here. And we just come off a winning roster, and we don't have too much money. This is important right here. We don't have too much of our cap space tied up in three or four guys, right? Our top four or five guys here. The cap numbers aren't horrible. They're staged, they're staggered. That's good. So almost any direction you look here, and this is what really has me excited, not just the winning, which is the best thing. It's now moving forward. All these good, healthy indicators of a good, healthy roster here. So that's my final take here, and I'll hand it over to you. Just really like it almost any way I look at it here, other than the talent, which we're about to talk about. I like the way that this health and financial setup currently is.
Yeah, I mean it's in a perfect position really to make a substantial jump just in terms of roster talent. Um,
Yeah,
you have so much to work with, and this is a big reason why Adam Peters took the job to begin with, was because he saw like, hey, the roster I have right now, it is crap. We're gonna cut about 50% at least of what's here, and that's where that a lot of that dead money came in for 2024, that 47 million. He just cut ties with anyone that Ron Rivera chose. He was like, you're done.
right.
Very few holdovers. So
Yep.
having all of that to work with, it was enticing to him. That's why he's here. It's enticing with a quarterback on a rookie deal to be like, hey, you know what? We can load up on some of these top tier talented players, and we can just go for it from there. And, you know, NFC, as we've talked before, is wide open. We have an
Yep.
opportunity here, and we're well set up for it.
All right. If I could give a grade here, not on the talent, but on the energy, the draft picks, the financial setup right now, everything. If I could give a grade just on that, I would give an A to it. Just a straight up hardcore A. The only way I'd give an A plus is if they just had even more cap space to work with.
Yeah.
But it's an A level
Yeah.
in terms of, hey, we are positioned to do anything we want to do, and we still have talented guys. It's not like the Cleveland Browns 5, 6, 7 years ago where they cut everybody. And of course, they had 100% flexibility, but there wasn't anybody left on the team to play, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
still have people here on the team, so you get a good, great A grade here on your health because you are still in position to do almost anything you want to do, whether it's Myles Garrett or not, Max Crosby or not, draft or not, trade up, trade down. You can do anything you want to do here. There's nothing inhibiting you. Love it. Absolutely love it. Okay. Here is our final section of the night. We are going to talk about the Commanders' needs. And there's a bunch of them. We have
Yeah.
already alluded to that. Okay. So if there's a Commanders fan out there screaming at us that, hey, there's a lot of them, yeah, we got that. Okay. We're going to prioritize. Okay. And our priorities may change during the off season. Okay. We do not promise to keep these priorities, but Robertson, you and I are going to each list our top three priorities that we want to fix. And it could be very specific or it can be generic. All right. But we're going to talk about what three things we would like to fix currently and move through that list. So, Robertson, I'll let you handle the first one, man. Go ahead.
So, the theme of tonight is depth. That is my theme of the night. That is the
Okay.
overarching theme. For me is depth. We got very lucky in 2024, where we didn't really get bit with the injury bug that bad. There was a couple here and there, but nothing too substantial.
Right.
To key pieces, like I said, John Allen tore his pec, but it was already the worst run defense before he got injured, so it wasn't like a major loss at that point. Um, my thing is depth at every position. If you can add a guy who's maybe not a top end starter, but he can help your team, or he can help if your starter does go out, I want him added in there. We desperately need that. So that's kind of my overarching theme for it. Specifically, my number one thing is the trenches, offensive, defensive line. That needs to be, in my opinion, the primary focus of the offseason. And for several reasons. One, because again, top end talent not there. Cosme is Sam Cosme is going to miss probably all of next season. If not, he's going to return very late. So that's already one position that you need to fill automatically. That's completely ignoring Andrew Wiley's contract that you can free up 8 million bucks if you cut him, or which I suggested for the playoff game, just kick him inside for the season, and there you have your right guard. Just get a right tackle either in
Which
the
we thought
draft
they were
or
going to do, and they didn't. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So or you can kick him inside, have him train for during the offseason, say, hey, you're gonna play guard the rest of the way, and find a right tackle either in the draft or free agency. Um, And then on the defensive side, I mean, while we're talking Myles Garrett, because we need an edge rusher. Um, and we have edge rushers, but they're just not top guys. We have some nice pieces. Dante Fowler's a free agent. Dorrance Armstrong, he's on the books for next season, but outside of that, we've got a bunch of unproven guys. So there's some major depth in the trenches that we need to acquire.
I'm more specific, but I'm in the same category. All right. So I just went with tackle, offensive tackle.
Yeah.
I know they weren't horrible this year, and the offensive line, wasn't horrible this year compared to say the past two seasons before it. But still, when you just step back and look at the personnel, the talent that is there, there's not a lot of talent. There's not a lot of guys on your offensive line that other teams want to come play for their offensive line. Okay, and that is the number one talent barometer. Okay, how many guys on your squad does the other team across the field look at and go, yeah, we want you on our side? Okay, there ain't a bunch of those in the
Yeah.
offensive line, specifically the tackle. So I'll start with tackle spot. I'm not going to say left tackle, right tackle because we can always swing and move around. But I would love to see them fix it. Now, this may change as a priority for me over the offseason because it's not going to be easy to fix the tackle spot from where you're drafting, which is 29th in the first round. For me, it would be a lot easier to fix that if you were, say, drafting number 8 overall. There's two or three pretty good tackles up there, but they're going to be gone by the time you get to 29. So I'm not sure that can be fixed this offseason, but just from a needs standpoint, what's important to me and what I've been screaming at the Commanders for probably 3 seasons now, even before I ever met you, was, hey, I want this offensive line fixed, and I want
Yeah.
it fixed now, and let's start with the tackle spot. So number one need for me is tackle spot, but it may not even get fixed this offseason. We may go through with what we got again. So, all right, you're number two. Number two need.
Yeah. And just on that tackle discussion real quick, I'm looking through potential free agents upcoming. I mean, there are definitely options out there, at least as Band-Aid fixes for next season. Obviously, this is before anyone gets re-signed or released by their current teams, but there are potential solutions out there as a Band-Aid fix, not a long-term fix. So that part I'm not necessarily too worried about. I'll tell you my number two priority, and this is I think me and you are both excited about this because we've talked about it for probably going on 3 years now. We need a running back. We we need a bell cow running back that has some dynamic traits to his game. And no, I'm not talking about Najee Harris. Sorry, Steelers fans. Sorry, Simon Short. When I mean dynamic, I do not mean Najee Harris. Or Aaron Jones for that matter. I know those are two guys that are probably going to be the top backs available. Those guys are not the guys that I'm thinking of. Um, it's probably going to have to happen through the draft, or I don't know. I don't know any top flight backs in the league right now that would be available through trade or that are going to all of a sudden get released. So you're gonna have to find maybe bring in two through the draft, you know.
Yeah,
There needs to be a talent infusion in that running back room. Not that Brian Robinson's a bad back, he's not. Not that Austin Eckler's a bad back, he's not. There is no one in the backfield that anyone fears right now. And you add a dynamic playmaker in the backfield with Jaden Daniels and already a top 5 run game with this mediocre offensive line and mediocre backs. I mean, it makes Jaden Daniels' life a hell of a lot easier in year two.
Yeah, it does. I see. I agree. Now, I didn't put running back in my top three because we got to pick a priority, but running back's one of the needs. I mean, there's no question about it. And we've already mentioned it. There are more needs. Even good teams can't fix all their needs in one offseason because at a certain point it gets hard to even upgrade your position, right? Like, say, well,
Yeah,
I've got an average defensive back group, but by the time I get my draft picks and my cap space, am I really going to be able to upgrade it? Probably not. Even if I'm on a good team, certainly when you come to a team that has this many holes, you're not going to fix everything in one off season. You might kind of address it with band-aids, but you can't fix everything. So, but I agree, running back is a spot we'd love to see, and it's not a bad draft as far as running backs go. I mean, all up and down. Ashton Jaunty, if he were to drop maybe to say 17, 20, 25, we don't know yet what NFL teams think of him, where they actually want to draft him at. So, it would at least be an option to trade up a little bit and get him if he starts sliding. You get past him, though, you've got Amarion Hampton out of North Carolina, probably sitting there in the second round if you want to try to draft him. But even all up and down this draft, third, fourth, fifth round, sixth round, there are guys that are worth drafting. I wouldn't mind picking up two.
yeah,
Devin Neal out of Kansas, grab him and another guy, Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. Put them in the same backfield. Best man wins the job. Maybe one of them's a bust. Oh well, there goes my sixth round draft pick. My feelings are
happens
real
all
hurt.
the
So yes,
time.
so I'm totally on board with that. And this, honestly, probably a whole heck of a lot easier to fix running back than it is tackle, right? So even
Yeah,
though tackle's my top priority, we may be able to fix running back fairly quickly, and I would want to do that. So totally agree, even though it's not my top three. My number two is sorry, I'm double checking my list here, is safety. I I really just want to fix the secondary, period. And again, I don't think the secondary was horrible. I like some of the pieces back there, okay? And some of them are going to get better. But still, how many guys in my secondary do other teams really covet want to have? It's not a lot. So I would love to get somebody back there at safety. And again, this is a good draft for it. I haven't yet looked at safeties in free agency. If you've got it pulled up, great. But it's a good draft for safeties, especially in the first round. There's a guy named Malachi Starks that's not going to be around by the time our 29th pick comes around. He's a heck of a player. But there's other guys sitting right there at the late first round. There's two or three guys that I like, even back in the late third round. There's a couple of guys that look like they could be talent upgrades and give you a chance. So safety, whether I do it for free through free agency or through the draft, I want to fix that. But it can be any defensive back upgrade. I just want to continue to make this defensive backfield better, not let it continue to be what it has been for the past two or three seasons. You're number three.
real quick on the safety point, would you bring back Jeremy Chin? I know we'll talk about this in the coming weeks, but since you
It
brought it
doesn't
up,
excite me. I'll put it that way. I mean,
okay,
I'm sure cap wise, it probably isn't that expensive, right? But no, I want to upgrade. I really do.
okay, okay, fair enough. Um, number three for me, Matt. This is tough because, uh, you know, I know we need a second receiver. I don't think second receiver is gonna put us over the edge. Um, I'll be honest. I want a contingency plan for Bobby Wagner. Uh, I I'm 95% sure that he's gonna come back. Because he was on a 1 year deal this past year. But behind him, there's nothing. There is nothing. Nada. Zilch. We got a special teams guy and another special teams guy and a guy that's played some snaps but very sparingly. And that's not a good plan. Again, overarching theme here is depth. Someone needs to be there with Bobby Wagner. I think he still has a couple years left in the tank of high end play, but if he doesn't, then there is nothing behind him. And I would love to bring in a young linebacker, either sign him in free agency, a guy that maybe hasn't worked out somewhere else, or bring him in the draft and have him learn under Bobby Wagner, learn how to do it the right way. And that way you have a future plan. Because right now, like I said, you got nothing. Uh, we're a twisted ankle or a
Yeah.
sprained MCL away from having no answer on defense to really captain the defense. There's nobody that can do what Bobby Wagner does that we have as a replacement. So backup linebacker. I know that sounds really stupid, but it's I mean, there's a chance that he doesn't come back, or there's a chance that we don't resign him. I feel like that's very slim, but there's no contingency plan behind him.
I'll tell you what, and linebacker's not my top three. But again, to me, there's six or seven kind of significant holes in this ship that need to be filled and fixed. So we put it at three is what we could fix tonight. But I'm with you on the linebacker thing. So first of all, let's talk about him. If if he decides he wants to retire, I'm immediately going to hire him and make him part of my coaching staff. I don't care what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
He's not going anywhere. I will pay him handsomely to stay in the building. But
yeah.
if he wants to come back and play for as long as he wants to come back and play, he's going to play for us. I mean, man, he's got the Hall of Fame pedigree. He has won. He has worked for us. You talk about a guy that knows how to bust tail and he's intelligent. Talk about a guy that can read the defenses and know what they're going to do. He's just not as fast as he used to be, man. But good grief, he's in great shape. I mean, he hasn't quit working out. He hasn't quit working hard. I want this guy in my building, whether he plays on the field next year or whether he doesn't. We just start working him up through the coaching staff pipeline. I want this guy in the building. But you're right. There needs to be something behind him slash with him, and I would really love to get a fast linebacker um, out of the draft. Hopefully, a young guy that can learn from Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner, you're just the linebackers coach now, or you're if we've got a line, we've got a linebackers coach, but you're the assistant the linebackers coach. Okay, until we have to reshuffle the staff. But I want this young kid to learn from Bobby Wagner, not anybody else. I want this guy to be fast and be able to go sideline to sideline and then bulk up and work up. So I'm 1,000% wanting to do that. Tell you, guy, and again, I'm cheating a little bit here because I've been studying the draft since last August. There's a guy for the Oregon Ducks, a linebacker. I think his name is Bosa. Has looked really good here as we start to head through the Senior Bowl drills and stuff. So maybe just maybe second, third round might be a guy there worth considering. So I
Uh,
definitely love the linebacker thing.
I'll tell you one thing real quick, and fans will love this. If you could somehow, on a 1-year deal, but I would even pay a premium to do it, pry away Zach Bond away from Philadelphia, not give him a long-term deal because I want to see another season
Yeah,
of an all-pro performance, right? If you
right.
could somehow pry away Zach Bond from that Philly defense and put him next to Bobby Wagner and be like, hey, you had a great year. Let's learn from the best here. Oh, man. I mean, I would be all for that.
Yeah, if it could not if it could not be a long term deal, which I'm skeptical of, right? I
Yes.
figure if he's available, somebody's gonna have to ink him to 4 years.
Yes.
The guy's name is Jeffrey Bossa, linebacker from Oregon, currently projected to kind of be a third round draft pick. So for me, I'm all in here. Just go ahead and tell you that straight up. My last one. I'm actually cheating here, and we're almost done. I'm actually cheating here a little bit because I kind of know what's available in this year's draft. I'm going to go back to edge. Okay, so I had penciled in wide receiver as my number three option, but the draft isn't as sweet at wide receiver this year. And you've already mentioned it, Robertson. Neither is free agency.
Yeah.
Uh, Go check out here on the box on Sports Money KC our wide receiver free agency over on YouTube. Check that out. It's kind of sketchy both in the draft and in free agency this year. If you want a wide receiver, they're there. It's just not as big a crop this year. Okay, this crop of apples just ain't as delightful as they might usually be. With that in mind, this year's edge rusher group in the draft is good, man. First round, second round, a lot of guys to choose from. And I don't know that they're going to be dominant, but I don't necessarily have to have them be. So I've got Edge as my number three. I don't actually feel like Edge is as desperate as maybe it has been, say, at the end of last season, because I saw Dan Quinn be able to generate pressure with Fowler and with Lubu and be able to get pressure. But still, if I can get one of these young guys in the draft here that I know is sitting here and put him there at Edge, I'd love to do that. So Edge is one of my top three priorities as well. And who knows, maybe plug in Myles Garrett. So, any final thoughts here, Robertson?
None of these answers have been wrong, so that just tells you where the state of our roster is. Um, it look, I'm being a Debbie Downer about the roster here, but I feel like that to me that just we need to have some sort of urgency about, fixing this thing. If you want to win next year, or if you want to be a consistent winner in the NFC, as in winning at least a playoff game or getting to the divisional round or getting back to the championship game, the way the roster currently is constructed, you're not getting back to the championship. You're just not. You got to make significant changes to even have a chance to get back there,
Yeah.
right? So there needs to be some sense of urgency and it needs to be a balance, right? Because we said top end talent and depth, those don't usually go hand in hand all the time, especially in the same offseason. So how the strategy is formed for this offseason, we're going to find out very quickly. I think what their strategy is. But I mean, it's exciting. The possibilities are pretty much endless because of how they're set up with cap space, draft picks, and so forth. So it's exciting. Just I'm curious what Adam Peters and company or what they're going to be end up planning to do.
What they're planning to do, first of all, is watch this episode and get mine and your thoughts, and then they can really
Yeah.
feel good about what they're kind of looking at doing the rest of the off season.
Yeah, I mean they can reach out to us at any time. We can
Yeah,
provide some consultation, a small fee.
yeah,
Ben, you run a service, I'm sure that they would very much consider hiring you on as a part-time consultant. Very small fee, I'm sure, but
yes, yeah. Small fee. I don't come cheap here. All right,
yeah, there you
look.
go.
All right, for those of you listening, we're going to do this all off season because we're sickos and we enjoy it. Okay, so we're
Yeah.
going to go through everything that the Commanders do and everything that we want them to do. So we won't just react to everything. We will look ahead and talk about it. So in 2 weeks, we'll be back here, not next week, but 2 weeks from now, we'll be back here. That'll be February 18th. We're planning to do the Commanders' scheduled free agents. So we're going to look at all the guys that are scheduled to be free agents. We'll talk about them. We'll probably also include a couple of the if they haven't re-signed anybody yet, talk about a couple of the guys that they might look at re-signing. We'll hit that as well. And then coming up over February and March, we're going to do a couple of mock drafts, probably the first 3 or 4 rounds. Actually, talk about what's available in each of those rounds, not just who we would want to have, but what's also available. And then when the Commanders draft actually gets here, we'll have a whole episode where we just look back and talk about what the Commanders did with their draft. So we got an entire off season here to go through, and we appreciate you being with us. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great one. Until next time. Goodbye.